with the live streaming. So thank you for bearing with me. I know it's been 4 minutes, so I appreciate the patience. And I'm excited to get ready to start talking about the Akashic Records. So it's just going to be a quick overview on what it is, and I'm going to talk briefly about the galactic history too, because I believe it all plays a huge part in the Akashic Records itself. So let's talk about what are the Akashic Records. So in parentheses, I put galactic because I really don't think there's a big difference between the two. The only difference is that the galactic really spans across the whole universe, where the Akashic Records normally have just really been Earth-based with our past and future lives. So now we're expanding past that, which is really exciting. We just have a lot more awareness now that this is all going on. So really what the Akashic Records are is it's a metaphysical library of every thought, word, action, really anything that's ever been done everywhere. So the possibilities are endless, and it really exists outside time of space, which is cool. But I've also heard that in the Atlantean time period, there was an actual place where there was some sort of metaphysical library. I don't know if it looked like the library we have, today, or that I have in this picture, but it's just something to ponder on, or maybe something to check out the records yourself, which I will be telling you a little bit about later on, how to access them yourself, which is actually pretty easy to do. So bear with me here. Really what it is too, it's just an all-encompassing field of quantum awareness. And I like the quantum awareness because that really gives us a sense of how vast it really is. And, when we hear like every thought, every word, every action, that is such a huge concept to put in our human brains and to comprehend that it's like, okay, and it just kind of goes in and out. But I like the quantum awareness because it kind of gives us a different perception of it. So we can look at it a different way and get a little more familiar with what it is. So these records are available to absolutely everybody, even the people who might misuse it, which we'll talk a little bit about that too. And there are going to be repercussions. So, there's karmic patterns that can happen that pop up when you do certain things. So it really is available to absolutely everybody, even if you're not spiritual. Anybody can access them, and I truly believe we access them all the time. Even thinking about, you get a little image in your head and you think of something, or you get deja vu, that's most likely you accessing the records. Or I know somebody who has smelt things before, that can be accessing the records too, just in a different way. So your experience might look different from everybody, and that's totally fine. The origins here on Earth come from the Sanskrit texts. There's Akasha that they talk about. So if you want to dive into the ancient history of the actual Akashic Records, that might be something to look into. It's very cool. Some of the benefits of reading your Akashic Records are understanding these karmic patterns. So these karmic patterns, when you incarnate and you reincarnate, you typically do so your soul can learn certain lessons. And when you reincarnate over and over and you're trying to learn a certain lesson, but you're not learning it yet, you can look into the records and see, okay, this pattern's come up a lot for me, or I've done this in a past life before and I didn't learn my lesson. And now we have this awareness and we have this capability to access these records and understand where these patterns are coming from. And now we actually get to see it from a galactic standpoint. So a lot of the humanoid species, if not all of them, came from Lyra, the Lyra system, and the Lyra Vega system. And the Lyra system is very masculine versus the Vega system, which is very feminine. And even those two states of polarity come with certain karmic patterns. When the vegans were so into that physical reality, they didn't look within and they weren't spiritual enough, where the vegans were very spiritual and they didn't really focus on having that physical experience. So when you have these patterns that you've experienced in your lives that you haven't healed from yet, it's really a great opportunity to look and see, oh, okay, I've experienced that before. What can I do now to heal from it? And you can even connect with your guides and you can ask them, hey, what's going to be my best option for this and that? What can I do to heal this karmic pattern that keeps showing up? So it's really a great tool to use to get some guidance, to connect with your guides too, and really just learn about some health patterns. I know, like I said, with the Lyra and Vega, they tend to have some inflammation, like chronic inflammation problems that can look like fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. It can look like a lot of different things like that. So it's nice to see, okay, hey, I may be from this system and I also have this health problem. Here's how I can start the healing process and what's going to work best for me, because this is where I've been. And it's like fitting in all the puzzle pieces together. And this gives you a chance to do that in a way where it can actually help you move forward, which is what I'm all about. I'm all about actual results. I don't want to work with somebody and then we got to do a million different things. And that's a lot of work. I like efficient, I like easy. And the Akashic Records might seem really scary at first because it's so vast and big, but in reality, you can hone down on a question that you're looking for and ask the records and get the answer you're looking for. So it's really curious for me that it's not so widely known yet. And maybe that's why I'm talking about it today, to let more people know about it, because it is such a great resource for all of us. We all have these records. It's available to everybody. Like I said, it's not just available to everybody, but it happens with everybody too. So here's how you can prepare to read the records, because I'll give you some insight how even right after we're done here, you can dive right in and read the records yourself. So really your intentions are going to be about 90% of your effort. If you go in and you're really looking to get in the records for a good purpose, let's say you do want to find out what was my last Earth incarnation. So you just kind of have that intention in your body. There's a certain way that I'll talk about in just a second of how to get there, but it really is your intentions of, are you doing this for a good reason? Now, let's say you want to go and look at your 6th grade bullies records because you want to get back at them. That's probably not going to happen. The guides probably won't give you that kind of information because you don't really want to go in and read somebody else's records without their permission. I don't like coaching people without getting their permission. So it's really just asking for people's consent, that's okay. So you don't want to, and like I said, there would be karmic repercussions because it's like the law of attraction. What you give out, you get back. That's karma. It's your vibration. It's whatever matches your vibration. So if you're going in there with malicious intents, you're probably going to get something like that back. So be really mindful of why you're accessing the records, to be in service of people, to be helpful. What I like to do and what I've been doing is meditating beforehand and clearing my mind prior to each reading, because that puts me in a really good headspace. I'll probably do it for about 15 minutes and just kind of relax myself and get out of my own head, because these readings aren't about me. They're not about my records. They're about reading somebody else's, or even if I am reading my records, I don't want to be reading my intuition. I want to be reading my actual records. So another thing you can do is just being mindful of how you treat everybody on a daily basis and going through life through love versus through judgment and just not being very nice. So really be mindful of that. And also you can raise your vibration by eating really healthy foods and going outside in nature. There's a lot of different things you can do to raise your vibration, to be able to connect with your guides, quote unquote, easier, I should say. Another thing you're going to want to do to prepare yourself is keep yourself grounded before and after. Just really any time that you're in this physical reality is a really good idea to keep yourself grounded. So in this book, I'm going to recommend to you all, it gives you this pillar of white light meditation that encompasses you in love and connects you right to the records. So you don't have to worry about any of that. It's such a formal and easy process. Everybody can follow it. So it's great because it, you know, it just wraps you up in that love. And not that you want to go in with the intention of thinking you need to be protected from something, but just simply wrapping yourself up in this white light of love can really be beneficial, especially when you connect directly to your guides and the records. And something really easy, just take a drink of water, really just get yourself in that physical reality. Because I know sometimes when you get out of the records, it can be almost like, okay, where am I? What just happened? Because so much of yourself is focused on reading the records, immersing yourself in those experiences and senses that you're not really here. So even just taking that sip of water can be really beneficial. Or just walking around on a patch of grass. I love walking around on grass, just whipping my shoes off. And I think that's great. Works great for me. Do what works great for you. You can even do a meditation that grounds you, keeps you rooted to earth. There's so many different things you can do. You don't have to limit yourself. Everything that I say here is just what's really worked for me, what's worked for other people. And you can take it as inspiration to help you find what works for you, or you can try it like this: do what feels right for you, because that's the right way. Okay, so here we've got accessing the actual records. So there is a sacred prayer. There's a few different types of prayers. I've personally only used the pathway prayer, but I did want to look into some other prayers just to make that available for some other people, because not everybody resonates with God. So there's the vibrational frequency of what you're saying that opens up the records. So you access the records through your 8th chakra, which is right about here. And that is the 8th dimension, which is also where your guides are going to be. The guides are where the records are held, metaphysically speaking. So it's all really based on this energy matching. If you are in that right frequency to match the records, you'll be able to access them. So practice really helps, and understanding what helps you to get in the records easier for yourself. So it's really just experimenting for what works for you. Something really specific too is using your current legal name. So it's whatever your legal name is. So I'm married. I use my married name, Melissa Etzler. That's what's on my social security card now. That's how the government knows me, right? So I use that name. I'm not Melissa Richards anymore, so I don't use that. You want to use who you are now, especially if you're reading somebody else's records. You want to use who they are now. You want to use their actual current name. So you can also use their birthday because these are vibrational frequencies as well. And everybody has their own specific frequency that relates to their records. And that's why I wouldn't do Melissa Richards, because I don't want to access my records from when I was 8. I want to access them now. And I don't even know if that's a thing. So maybe that's a good thing for me to look into, is just see if we did happen to do it in a different way, is that going to affect it? So sometimes too, with cool stuff like this, is you get more questions to ask. And I love questions because I know a lot of us humans are very inquisitive and we like figuring things out. So it's really cool to be able to have a place where you can dive into and really see what's going on with yourself and what you can do with others. Now, I will say, if you want to access somebody else's records and you don't have their permission, you can do it like a little tricky way to do it is you can go in your own records and say, how can I help this person? What can I do best for this person? So if I wanted to go, you're not supposed to access anybody under 18. So if you want to, like if I wanted to ask about, my son is turning 7 today. So if I wanted to ask about him, how can I help Evan best in his life as his parent? So there are ways around it, but still you have to remember your intention too. My intention for doing that would be to help my son out of love for him, not because I, don't want to be nice or something. So it really, your intentions are huge. And I say that so strongly because that's what I have noticed as a pattern throughout many teachers and mentors and coaches that I've had, is that intention is really a big thing. So really, really be curious about your intentions and what you're putting out there. And it's not a way to, judge yourself harshly, but it's just a way to understand where you're coming from and be aware of the decisions that you're making so you can make them for the reasons that you like. And like I said, I've never done this, the prayer from Johnny Proscata. I'm not even sure if that's how you say his last name, sorry. But I will say a lot of people had great things to say about it. And it's generally the same. You're saying a sacred prayer to get you into the records. The records aren't going to be different either way. There's even a way you can access it more quickly by connecting with the pillar of light to your 8th chakra. But I like more formality. And like I said, intention. So when I do that more formally, the intention feels better for me and it feels right. So I like doing it that way for now. Maybe it'll change. Who knows? Here's some question guidelines. So if you want to ask, when am I going to find the love of my life? That's really irrelevant. And the reason why is because, the records are going to show you everything. It's going to show you every possibility. So if I make a decision here, that decision that I make is going to have a million other decisions that can come with it. And when I make another decision, that same thing happens. And if I don't pick one of those million decisions, those decisions still exist. So when you start asking when, well, they don't know. It could happen whenever. It just depends on what is lining up with you. So if you want to ask a card reader for something like that, that's going to be your best bet for when and time related questions. You want to avoid yes, no questions. That's better used with a pendulum if you know how to use one of those. I don't really use one of those, but I know some people who use it and love it, and I love seeing it. I think it's very cool. So you really want to stick with questions that are open-ended. When was my first incarnation? What star system am I from? There's a lot of different questions that you can ask like that will give you sometimes a really in-depth answer. So think about that. Think about the kind of questions you want to ask. Usually what I'll do is I'll think about my question beforehand. Sometimes I'll even meditate on my question just so I can really get into what I want to know. And a lot for me is I love knowing about my past lives, mainly, especially my galactic ancestry. That's super cool to me. So I love diving into that. But I have looked into some of my Earth lives. Not that they're boring, but I'm on Earth right now. So that's my thought. Okay. So Allie, I saw that you asked about intuition. That was one of my big questions too. So I've got your answer right here. And this is really from the book. It's the book that I'm recommending for you guys is ask yourself a question and then write down your answer using your intuition. Then use the pathway prayer, use whatever you want to get into the records and ask the same question on a different piece of paper and then compare them, because usually they might be very similar or they might be a little bit different, because this intuition is more of a knowing or an inkling. Like if you're driving down the street and something just tells you, pull over because there might be an accident coming by. That's more of your intuition and not necessarily accessing the records. So there's a little fine line, but Some people might be able to access the records a little quickly, or maybe their intuition's really high. But really the records is what is going to give you and each person the same answer. And I will say too, with that, some people name things differently. So really understand that. I know a lot of people have heard of like the Galactic Federation. Now, some people call it something else. We don't even know what they call it unless we've had actual people from that source tell us. So really, I wouldn't fixate so much on, even with the star lineages, it's not so much about, well, I was in Lyra, then Vega, then Sirius, then Orion. It's not necessarily about that, but it's about these experiences and these lessons that your soul is learning. So that's really what you want to look into, because what happens too is you do switch timelines all the time. When, like I said before, when you make these little decisions each day for a million different things, that's going to take you into different timelines. So let's say you do open the records and you're like, you know what? I don't really like what I'm seeing. I'm going to switch timelines, which switching timelines isn't like, hey, here's this time loop, quantum physics wormhole that I'm going to jump in. It's literally just making a different decision. And, you know, I'd like to believe some magical, like, oh, there's this and that I'm going to see during my spiritual awakening, but it's not necessarily like that right away. And I would like to consider myself very normal, where I haven't had a lot of experiences like that. I've always been very intuitive and stuff like that, but I haven't always been exactly looking at these kind of answers. So especially with like the clairs, some people have had these experiences a lot more than I have. So if you are somebody who hasn't really had, you know, any clair audience, clair, I don't even know all of them. I'm sorry. I wrote the clairs and then I just wrote all the senses. So if you have stuff like that, that's great. And that might really help you when you go into the records. Now, when you go in at first, it might be a little hazy. It might be a little different than what you were expecting. Everybody's experience is going to be different. And I'll tell you about the first time I went in. The first time I went in, I basically was like, soul, what do you want to show me? What do you want to show me? I didn't know what to ask. So it was very vague for me. And I'm like, just show me what you got. And what I saw, so I usually will see things. I see things with my third eye. So it's like a memory. It's not like I'm seeing this physical 3D world. I'm closing my eyes and I can see the image of it. So what I saw was, I saw a lot of tan. I saw a lot of rocky formations, and I saw some solar panels. And then it was more of an inner knowing for me. I have a lot of inner knowingness. I don't really have clairaudience at all. I don't hear anything other than myself. I will hear things, but it's usually always just me. But it might look different to you. Maybe you only hear something and you don't see anything. Maybe you smell things, like maybe there was a fire and you smell the smoke from the fire, or maybe you lived on the ocean and you can smell the seawater or the salt water. There's so many different things that might pop up. Maybe you really liked eating burgers in your past life, so you taste burgers. There's so many different things, and it truly is all the clairs that can happen. I know a lot of spiritual people are very connected to that, the clairs, and being able to be more intuitive with our natural senses. So the more you do this, the more you can refine it. Now, when you're in the records, you can also ask your guides to help you. So sometimes people can see just a million things, like a really fast movie just reeling by your face. What you can do is say, can you please show me a snapshot? Slow it down for me and take a snapshot and feel that snapshot. What do you see in that picture? So just focus on one thing, because it can be really overwhelming, especially if your third eye is like wide open. Another thing you can do with that is you can even envision putting an eyelid down on your third eye. Remember, intention is everything. And what you believe you can truly create. So it's incredible what you can do with these experiences that you have. So I've also seen that life that I just told you about. I'm sure it was in Lemuria. And when I went in, it's not like I saw a sign that said, "You're in Lemuria." What I just knew. I just knew. And that's what it was for me. And at first it's like, okay, is this even real? What am I even seeing here? How am I going to be able to validate this in any way? So another thing that comes up a lot too is people saying they've all had the same past life. So like, oh, hey, I found out I was George Washington in a past life. And then somebody was like, hey, wait, I was George Washington in a past life. Well, the thing is, um, time and space as we know it isn't linear at all. So when we're not on Earth and we're not experiencing life here, it's not going to look like this. So even our idea of reincarnation is a lot different than what I've been thought to believe. So it's not necessarily like, okay, I in this life now, and now I'm going to die, and then I'm going to go into my next life, which is in 2100, let's say. It's not always going to be like that. Some people incarnate the opposite way just to see what it's like. Some people incarnate just a couple of times. Some people incarnate in between lives where a soul will just walk in for a little bit just to experience something. So there's a lot of different ways to experience um, looking in the records and understanding where you came from. So it's very, very interesting to look at this reincarnation in a different way, especially because we are all fragments of source, of God. So when we hear about this, I have my own ideas of what I think reincarnation is. But when will we really know? I could look into the records and see. I know people even look into the records to look, when is the financial crisis going to be over? People look at that stuff all the time. So really, you can ask the records anything you want. Intention is going to be everything. So here's some tips and tricks, what you can do. Start slow. I'm always very start slow with everything, just because it's easier for me to learn that way. And I've noticed very easy for other people to learn that way too. So I always, I did start by asking, just show me what you got. So just tell me what I need to hear today. Show me what I need to hear today. And that was fine. I mean, if you want to do something like that, that's fine. But you can also get more specific and say, what was my last lifetime here on Earth? Now, for me, my last lifetime, I got to go into my records a little bit more to pull this out. But what I saw was I was an older woman, and it was Christmas time in like 1965. And we were having Christmas. I was one of those typical like 60s homemaker wives, if you could say. So that's really what I got from it. But it's funny, and I'll tell you a little story, is I've had that memory my whole life. And my whole life I've had that memory, which is why I believe we do tap into these records all the time. Because why else would I have that memory of something that's not mine? So it's interesting. So I went into the records and I pictured it in my mind, and it brought me to the woman who I was, and I can even see what I looked like and what I was wearing. And um I'm going to have to take it a little bit further, but it's just so interesting to see what you can all discover by doing this, even just out of pure curiosity. Even if you just want to know, hey, where did I first incarnate ever? Where was that? Just because it's fun. So you can do that too. It doesn't always have to be about, okay, I'm going to heal myself, these karmic it can just be fun. Let it be fun too. Another thing is trusting yourself. Trust the information that you're getting. So when I got this information about Lemuria, I was, at first I'm like, oh my gosh, well, people don't really have lives in Lemuria. How am I going to have one there? But why am I questioning it to begin with? I am supposed to be trusting myself with this information. So it's really learning to lean into it, asking guides for more clarity if you need to. Like, hey, is this what I see? I'm getting this feeling. Can you help me out? And they are really good at helping. And they're really, they want to help humanity. They want to help us, raise our vibration. They want to help us awaken. They want to help us transcend this polarity that we're experiencing. Another thing is, don't drink alcohol. First of all, alcohol is probably the biggest one. Or don't take any recreational drugs. Now, if you take, prescription drugs because you have a medical need for it, don't worry about that. That doesn't include this at all. So it really is just like, hey, I'm gonna have a few drinks, because that really will affect your reading. Even getting a good night's sleep, get a really good night's sleep, make sure you're well rested, before you go and open up the records, because it can also be really energetically draining to go in there, because like I said, you're using all of your senses, and to use all of these senses, your brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. Your brain thinks, when you think of a memory, okay, that's really happening. And it doesn't know when it happened, because when I think of a memory that happened yesterday versus when I think of a memory that happened 12 years ago, I think of it the same way. My brain, your brain, doesn't know the difference. So it's important to understand that, because you can really feel like you are experiencing something like this, especially if you experienced heavy emotions. Let's say you go in the records and you found out you died a traumatic death in a war in your last lifetime. Well, you could experience a lot of trauma from that, just experiencing that, if you're not ready. Now, I will say the guides usually aren't going to give you information that you're not ready for. So if that is really going to traumatize you, they're probably not going to tell you. But really, even if that doesn't traumatize you, immersing yourself in that experience. I know, even I've watched shows like that before, and I would just start crying because it just breaks my heart. And putting yourself in that position, reading other people's records that does that, that's heavy. That's some heavy stuff. And you want to protect yourself from that. That's why grounding is important too, to remind yourself, hey, I am here in this physical reality. That's not happening to me right now. I'm safe. You want to make sure you are safe. And you are, I promise. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the galactic history. So a little excited. So really what it is, and it's really brief. I'm not going to talk very long about this, but what I believe is God, fragmented to experience quite literally everything imaginable. So all these different beings, these planetary systems, it wanted to experience that. God wanted to experience that, or source, or whoever you want to call it. They wanted to experience everything, even here on Earth. Think of how many different experiences we have to experience just here on Earth. It's incredible. Billions of people, everybody has their own individual experience. It's endless. It's endless, and it's blows my mind. So there really is just an infinite amount of beings. If you think it's probably there. A lot of people will say, if you think of Star Wars, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I've only seen the movies once, but I know that a lot of people will relate to Star Wars as what it really is like. And they say Star Wars is based off the Orion Wars that actually happened, which, has really traumatized a lot of people. They say, think of the worst things that have happened here on Earth, and it's not even 20% of what happened in Orion. And a lot of us have taken that trauma with us on Earth to heal more. So it's really, I love learning about stuff like this, because it shows us such a bigger picture of who we are and why we're here and why these things are happening to us. And it just gives us such a bigger picture. And plus, I've never felt like we've been alone. So this just makes so much sense to me. So if it resonates with you, I'm so glad, because a lot of these karmic patterns do come from our star ancestors. And a lot of them have their specific trauma patterns, just like I said with Lyra and Vega, how they have that traumatic signature of inflammation and the fibromyalgia and the multiple sclerosis. They are more prone to stuff like that. So when you can see that, you can understand, okay, well, I can set up my diet better, because when we were on Lyra and Vega, or whichever, those two are very closely linked together. You can understand, okay, well, they ate plant-based diets. So that might help me because I'm going back to my original way that I was. So it's just really good information to know and to understand, why am I feeling this way? Just like for me, I've always felt a sense of loneliness. And I'm like, I'm not lonely at all. I don't feel lonely, but there's always something in the back of me that has felt lonely. And what I came up with by doing this Galactic Akashic reading is that I still have trauma from fragmenting from source and not feeling like I'm a part of it always. And like I'm missing a part of me. And when I finally understood that consciously, I can take it and be more intentional with it. And it makes, like, that made sense to me. When I heard that, I was like, yes. So instead of trying to connect all the dots in our earth lives and being like, okay, well, what happened to me when I was 3? And what was I thinking when I was 5? And what teacher did this? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And that's what I said, I like results and I like efficient and I like easy. And that's why I like these Galactic Akashic records, because they're going to give you a really nice overview of what your soul has and is experiencing. And what I believe is this whole reincarnation thing is when soul fragments, it fragmented so much that we have little, like, tentacles, you could call them, what I envision, that just go in each vessel like we've got here simultaneously. Just like with our future lives, if you have a future life on earth, you're living it right now. You're living your past lives right now. It's just where your consciousness is at. Plus, we all have contracts here on earth to experience life like this, where there are other civilizations like the Andromedans who experience life way more fluidly, where change is their normal. Where for us, many of us feel like we live in Groundhog's Day all the time, where we live the same day over and over again. However, that's not always reality. So we can ask for some of this guidance from our Andromedan ancestors and cousins and family. And it's just gives me, and I know others, such a sense of companionship and like we're not alone, because our ancestors have gone through this. They've survived this. They've transcended past it. What can I learn from them? So it's very cool for me to be able to see this and just make sense of the patterns that have happened in my life and not have to relive every 3, 4, 5-year-old experience that I had that might have brought me to this feeling. Another thing is most of the civilizations are going to be about 95% in service and 5% in self-service. And that means I try not to use positive and negative so much, because there isn't really good or bad. The people who are in self-service, or not the people, but the beings who are in self-service, they really truly believe they are doing the best for themselves. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. So, that's just, maybe we do think they're doing something wrong, but it's all, there's a plan. There's a plan for everything. And that's something I'm still understanding. And I don't even know if it's something we have to understand in this lifetime. Some things I don't think we need to know the answers right now, because there's so much to learn and there's so much to grasp, especially from having this vast library at our fingertips. It can be really overwhelming, even with the whole spiritual awakening process of your perception shifting to everything, and now you feel like a new person. This can help you so much understand where to focus on so you don't get so drained. And here's more fun stuff. Galactic civilizations that are connected to Earth. So I didn't say history here because the Essassani and even the Yael that I didn't put on here, they are from, our future. They are future civilizations. But we've got Lyra, Vega, Sirius, Zeta Reticuli, Sirius, Draconian, Pleiades, Arcturian, Orion or Arcturus, and a lot more. And these are planetary systems. So like the Pleiades has planets like Taygeta, and Taygetans actually have a ship here to protect Earth from any outside forces. So we do have, because the Pleiades, they love us. They're like our cousins. They're very closely linked to us because what happened when Lyra branched off from all these, let me back up a little bit more. So Lyra and the Draconians had a big war and they had to flee. The Lyrans had to flee. So when they fled, they set up civilizations in other areas in the star system, one of which was the Pleiades. And those people originally started at Earth. So they have a connection with us because they did live on Earth first before us. So it's very interesting to see who's helping us, why they're helping us. And even like I said, that 5% of beings that aren't helpful, a lot of people will say like Zeta Reticuli and Draconian, those are the bad beings. And maybe the majority of them aren't good, but I want everybody to think of them like humans. You can't just look at a human and assume everybody's bad. You have to look at the individual. You can't, just like I put down here, good and bad beings in every species that experience polarity. So that's very specific because Arcturus has transcended past polarity and they don't have a negative being that you would encounter because they've transcended past it. Now with the Zeta Reticuli, Sirius, I put Sirius on there twice. Sirius, Pleiades, you will find good and bad in both, just like you will humans. There are good and bad humans. There are good and bad beings out there in the universe. It's really no different. You can relate a lot of what's happening on Earth to what's going on out there. There's a lot of galactic trade that happens, different minerals on Earth that different civilizations don't have. So there's a lot interconnected here. A lot of people like Earth. A lot of people like what we do here. And a lot of people are really deeply connected to us, just like the Zeta Reticuli, because they are technically us in the future. And they came back. And that's why you hear about a lot of the abductions, because we helped them become the Essassani, essentially. So if you want to go into really some of that galactic history, it's very interesting. I give you some resources at the end that you can dive into yourself. If you ever want to have a conversation with that about me, come on by, because I'd love to have one. I'm all for it. And really, a lot of these beings are going to be humanoid and non-humanoid. So what is said with Lyra and how that was the start of human civilization, humanoid civilization. It was the feline beings that really were the founders that helped create this. So there's going to be feline, avian, insectoid, gray, amphibian, reptilian, mixes of all of those. I mean, you see mixes of races here on Earth. There are mixes of races, as long as it works, in the galactic civilizations. So there's an infinite amount of beings not directly related to Earth too. It's said about 22 civilizations are like directly connected to us and are here helping us. But there's so many more. Some beings I'm sure just ignore us. And there's also a different universe that's connected to us. It's called the Doll universe, DAL, not DOLL. So it's interesting to see, okay, well, there's a different universe, and that universe, the Doll universe, is said to be like a parallel universe of ours. It would not exist without us, and we would not exist without it. So it's very interesting to hear a lot of this. And I know even with Bashar. So Bashar is channeled by Daryl Anka, and Bashar is an Essassani. So he's a future self of Daryl Anka. And Bashar will help with technological advances, and they help with pretty big things. So they are sharing their knowledge with us. And it's really interesting to see how we are all coming together to help each other, and being able to access these records. For me, I think it helps us not just have this information, but it helps us quiet ourselves a little bit more. It helps us get out of our own stories and see what the fact is, because we all have our own stories about things. We all experience something. And just like, there are 20 people here right now, you are all experiencing this webinar differently. Not one of you are having the same experience right now. And that's important to know and understand, and really, really feel that, because we can all take so much from others. And that's what I like about this. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Arcturus, and I've got just a little bit of time left, so I should be right on time. So life and death with Arcturus, they are said to be the keepers of the records. So when I say, you're asking your guides, you're asking the people in the records, it's usually going to be those Arcturian beings, but they are also going to connect you with your guides. So if I were to read your records, I'm going to connect with your guides. Even when I do my Galactic Heritage card readings, I still connect with whoever I'm reading for, their guides. So I really like that, because it's comforting. You're not there alone. You don't have to get lost in it. You have support in so many different ways. You have support in the records, out of the records. There's so many people that can help with this. So you never have to be scared or feel like you're not going to be able to do something. Plus, like I said, the Arcturian beings, they're past polarity, and that's why they're the keepers of the records, because they are for the highest good, for everybody, for the collective. And this is where we go before we incarnate, and it's where we go after. So before we die, and after, or before we're born, and then after we die, this is where we go. It's that bright light. It's the angelic being. These are where the angel realms are. So a lot of people say Archangel Michael is associated with like the blue violety color. Well, that's what Arcturus is too. So you can see all these patterns linking up. They're just different words. People call it different. So it's the same thing. And when you go there, you go through that book of life. And that's why I want to say this. You review these Akashic records when you die and you go there, you see all this lessons that your soul has learned. And I know a lot of people on earth right now are like, I'm never coming back to earth. Like, this is my last incarnation. And I get it. But is that how your soul is going to feel when you're on the other side? Is your soul going to be like, you know what? I thought I knew a lot, but I think I'm going to go back and learn some more. So I'm trying to stay more open with it, and not necessarily be so fixated on, I'm never coming back to Earth, because I think Earth, especially in like 500 years, is going to be pretty cool. So I'm up for it. All right. So here are some resources for you. And I put Galactic in, I can move it over a little. I put Galactic in the brackets just because you can get a lot of the Akashic record information from here, but it's also good for Galactic information. So I've actually got my Galactic Heritage cards right here. I love them. They're so great. And they've got so many different cards. They've got 108 cards that are all about Sirius, Pleiades, Arcturus, Andromeda, and the karmic patterns that have come with them. So it's been really great for me studying these Galactic Akashic records to see these patterns, instead of having to do thousands of readings and try to come up with a pattern like that. So I'm thankful for the people who have done that and have come up with it. Debbie Solaris is one of them. Linda Howe, Emily Harrison. Shelley Young doesn't do Akashic record reading, but she helped me connect with my guides in a way that felt really good. And I know a lot of people want to connect with their guides. So I think she's a really great resource to be able to do that. And then this book. Now, I didn't give too many resources because I don't want you to go buy 5 million different books and then never read them or only read half of them. That's not my intention. I want you to get this book, How to Read the Records, How to Read the Akashic Records by Linda Howe. It's literally a blueprint. You don't need anything else but that book, and it's not even like $15. So that is all you need, truly. And all you have to do is practice. I love what Lisa Royal Holt does. She's the one that does the Galactic Heritage cards. I like that so much because it's such a great explanation of these ancient civilizations, these galactic civilizations. That's not, oh, this one's better than the other one. Oh, there are a lot of negatives from this one and this one. They really just say what it is in a neutral way. And I like that because then it doesn't put any of those prejudgments in my brain. It just kind of goes with that flow. TV shows, I know a lot of you on here have I had to mention it. Deep Space, the last season, season 4, it goes through all these different civilizations, Arcturus, felines, Antares, I think. There's a lot of different, I think they're all like half hour. So it's really cool to immerse yourself in that and see, okay, these are other people's opinions of them. These are how other people have seen them. Sometimes they line up. Sometimes there's a little tweak of a difference. So it's cool to see that and then come up with your own definition for it. Really, I love Interview with Ed because Ruben does such a great job interviewing these people and asks all these great questions that we'd like to ask. But there are some specifically on the Akashic Records. And I also love Cosmic Disclosure. Now, I like Cosmic Disclosure specifically for more of the galactic understanding, especially Randy Kramer and Emery Smith. Their experiences that they have so generously shared with us are absolutely incredible. So really thankful to be able to understand it from so many different standpoints. Because like I said before too, I'm going into my records more to get better at it and to experience it more so I understand it. However, it's also nice to have this information. So let's say you do want to go in your records and you want to see where you first are incarnated from. How would you know what planet that is? How would you know what star system? So what you can do is look at the constellation of, think about the constellation, ask them to show you in that way. And then you can look up, okay, well, what does this, do a reversed image search and look at the constellation of where you were first from. And you can start understanding what questions work good for you, and always record it. I know you guys see my evaluations. Do these evaluations on your Akashic readings too. What worked, what didn't work, and what you'll do differently next time. Such a simple evaluation that can be really, really powerful. So I encourage you to do that. Definitely try reading on yourself first before you go into other people, which leads me to my invitation for you. So as you all know, I am learning about these galactic Akashic records, and I'm more so interested in the galactic part of it. So I would love to give everybody here, if you'd like one, a free 30-minute galactic Akashic record reading. There is just one catch. I want to focus on your ancestral line and your karmic patterns, your health patterns, so I can get more familiar with this myself. And in turn, you can get more familiar with it too and understand more about yourself. So all you have to do to get that is send me a message on Conscious Commons, and we'll get it set up. Super easy, easy peasy. That's how I like to make it. And that's all I have for you today. I'm just going to look at the chat. I appreciate you guys coming so much, really. I was so nervous and I couldn't believe the whole live streaming. I knew something was going to go wrong, but I'm still, it happens and we just go with it. And I'm glad you all stuck with me. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Allie, so much for doing this. I'm glad I answered your question, Allison. Oh, you like the point about names. Yes. Yeah, see, and that's important because that's who you are now. That's who you are in this moment. I've heard that explained due to universal consciousness beyond 3D. Yeah. Right. Yeah. See, it does make sense. And then when because this definition we have for reincarnation is so linear, we don't really think of it in a different way. But now so many of us are awakening to these broader perspectives that we can see, oh, okay, that makes sense. And things are starting to line up more. So I love that. Nick says his wife believes she died on the Titanic. That is crazy, Nick. We got to talk because I totally think my son was on the Titanic too. He is obsessed with it. And I've always wondered that. That is so cool. So cool. She experienced very vivid dreams. Wow. Oh, oh, I just got goosebumps, Nick. That is so incredible. Seems these records are a viable way to ease. Yes, yes. Yeah, so this is definitely a great way of keeping what we have, and keeping our traditions that have been lost orally. Especially, I know the library, that Alexandria library that was burned, had a lot of this information in there, and that's why it was burned, so we wouldn't have access to it. But little do they know, and what they don't want us to know is that we already have access to it. We just have to practice it. We just have to experience it more and understand it more and trust ourselves, because we got this. Okay. All right, everybody. All right. Thanks, everybody. Oh, you guys are so sweet. All right. Well, I'm so excited that you guys are all here. Thank you again. And I will see you all soon.